pick up on this news, and I'm joined now by Sindiswa Changuion. She's spokesperson for the Association of Private Security Owners of South Africa, Tapsosa. Thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated. You have welcomed Eskom's action today. If I'm correct in my research, it was your organisation that first raised the red flag about this contract. Tell us your concerns.
Sally, I think firstly, thank you for giving us an opportunity to you and your viewers. As Tapsosa, we fully welcome with open arms the action that is actually taken by Eskom with regards to this matter. You know that from as baking date as in October in 2022, we have been raising an alarm and requesting that some accountability takes place with regards to this matter, and that those that are involved need to be accountable. Right. And we had indicated even at that time that there was something very sinister with regards to the process that was actually undertaken in awarding of this contract. And the fact that Eskom has taken a step that it is looking into this matter, we are welcoming it with open arms.
Is your main concern that there was no tender process, or are there other issues?
Our main concern is that there was no tender process issued at first, but also it is about how the whole process took place in terms of awarding this particular emergency procurement contract to a particular service provider. And it is the manner in which it culminated to such a large sum of money to be awarded in the space of 3 months, and in implementing things that recommended by a particular report. Look, which we are saying that, yes.
I want to get onto the report in a moment, but I want to first deal with the contract, because from what I've been reading, you were told by Treasury that this single source contract was in fact legal because it fell under emergency procurement processes, which the Public Finance Management Act does allow for. Why are you not satisfied with that answer?
We had indicated to the National Treasury, firstly, in fact, when we wrote to Eskom, we wanted to understand that what is it that made this particular project to fall under that particular procurement process that had been undertaken. What is it that actually informed the Eskom for them to be able to go through this particular exercise of being able to procure through their emergency contract? And we did not find joy in the explanation that we actually got from Eskom. In fact, they were dismissed and given nonchalant attitude that it was within their right for them to be able to do that. That's the same type of the response that we actually got from the National Treasury. They can be able to procure services in an emergency procurement matter if there is a need. But we wanted to actually understand, because there are private security providers that were there on site, that were actually rendering the particular service that was emergency procured by Eskom.
So sorry to interrupt, but I'm trying to get clarity. Are you saying that this security contract was issued while there were already private security in place, so essentially on top of what the private security already in place were doing? Am I understanding you correctly?
That's exactly what we are saying, Sally. We are saying that before they decided to actually do that, they had consultations, so-called consultations that actually took place under the auspices perhaps maybe of being able to facilitate this particular project, to actually ask those providers to provide certain services that was pro bono at the time. And the consultation that actually took place, it was under the auspices that there is some intervention, extra security that had to be procured by Eskom in terms of being able to look at rendering services over and above what what was there.
You
and
mentioned
3 months down the line.
Yeah. Sorry, just very quickly, because I've got so much I want to check with you. Yes, so was this contract
Yes.
just for 3 months?
This contract was for 3 months. And if you look at the scope of work that was done or that was procured for in terms of that 3 months process, as a private security specialist, there is no way that you are going to be able to implement all those things that you're supposed to.
And that's what I want to ask you. Sorry to jump in. You represent private security owners, so I would imagine there have been lots of questions from people part of your union. And am I correct that Fidelity is not part of your union?
Yes, Fidelity is not part of our union, Sally.
Okay. But unhappiness, as you're saying, because, you know, to understand the scope of work, flagging a lack of transparency and saying, well, if it is all above board and you can justify this emergency single source, then play open cards. It seems that Eskom is now taking you seriously and is going to hopefully bring about an understanding. You mentioned the report, and I think you're referring to the Fivus Intelligent report, commissioned, of course, by Andre de Ruyter. The board saying this week they still don't have a copy of it. That report is disputed. Some say it's nonsense. Some say there's a fair amount of credible evidence. The reality is, if we put that aside, we know that Eskom still has major issues around security, sabotage and corruption. I want to ask you, do you believe that Andre de Ruyter and Karen Pillay were dedicated to fighting corruption? You know, maybe they cut corners, maybe they overreacted, for example, but do you believe that they were doing the things with the right objective in mind?
I think without really being subjective on the matter, Sally, you know, in terms of what the intent was, in terms of the former CEO, with regards to dealing with issues of corruption within the power utility, there are some measures that he actually perhaps maybe implemented as he had indicated. And that has to also be proven. We do not want to even paint people with one brush to indicate, because there is this issue that prevailed, to indicate that there is nothing perhaps that the man has done before that actually led to some bit of an improvement within Eskom. It is something that he had said, it is something that he said that he looked into, and he decided to actually depart for the reasons that he actually departed. So when it comes to the head of security, Sally, with regards to this particular issue, there are issues as well dating back some years ago, in which we had raised concerns with regards to this particular department, to indicate that why is it that there is always preferential treatment when it comes to certain service providers that provide services to this power utility. And therefore, the decision that is actually taken, or that was taken in that regard, we believe that it was actually informed by those particular bases. And it is something, this issue, it's not an issue that we took up with Eskom. There were previous issues where we wrote to Eskom and we raised certain issues in terms of certain processes. This emergency procurement process that took place in procuring services for security, it's not the first one that actually happened. It is because on this one, it is the magnitude of the money that was used in procuring services that made us to actually raise an alarm.
Yeah, and you know, the magnitude, 500 million rand. You're pointing to concerns that perhaps predate this particular issue. Eskom seems now to be doing the right thing, which is opening it all up. If there's nothing to see here, then we can see surely all the details of the contract, how it was awarded, what was the reasoning, because we are just 1 year away from the end of the state capture report, which showed just how badly our state entities had been infiltrated by corruption. We can never rest on our laurels. We can never be off our guard. So it's important that these issues are brought forward, that they're discussed in plain sight. And I want to thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. Let's hope we get answers quickly so that Eskom can do what it needs to do to get our power back on track. And I want to thank you so much for your time. That, of course, is Sindiswa Changuion. She is a spokesperson for the Association of Private Security Owners of South Africa, Tapsosa. They raised this issue a while ago and they welcome this probe. They say more heads should roll.